Zyril was not like the other young aliens from her planet. As part of a highly selective exchange program, she had been chosen to spend several weeks on Earth, a planet filled with strange and unpredictable beings. She had heard plenty about the human species and had studied them in her advanced schooling on Centauri, but nothing could prepare her for the chaotic reality that greeted her the moment she stepped out of the transport ship. The sky was dotted with unfamiliar shapes, strange flying machines that zipped by at incredible speeds. Her eyes widened as she tried to make sense of the madness surrounding her. This was Earth. She couldn't believe it. Back on her planet, everything was precise, orderly, and controlled. Yet here was a world that seemed to lack any sense of discipline or structure. Humans didn't appear to have any rules at all. Zyril's human guide, Ethan, greeted her with a smile as they descended the steps of the ship. He was tall, with wild brown hair and a casual demeanor. He didn't seem at all surprised by the chaos around them. But Zyril, she was utterly shocked. She had imagined a planet of civil beings, perhaps a bit messy, but never anything this out of control. "Is this normal for humans?" she asked Ethan, her voice filled with disbelief. Ethan chuckled lightly, as though he had heard the question countless times before. "You'll get used to it. This is Earth. We love a little chaos," he said with a grin, shrugging as if that explained everything. Just as Zyril was about to respond, a loud explosion echoed from the distance. The ground beneath them trembled slightly, and a thick plume of smoke rose into the air. The noise was deafening. Zyril's sharp senses could pick up every detail: the vibrations in the air, the sound of metal crashing, the panic that spread through the nearby crowd. Her heart began to race, and her hands instinctively reached for the advanced energy shield at her side. "Is that normal?" Zyril asked, her voice a little more urgent now. She could feel her instincts kicking in. Something wasn't right. Ethan, however, didn't seem fazed. He was already moving toward the commotion with the same relaxed pace, as if explosions were part of his daily routine. It's just a bit of human fun," he said with a wink. "Don't worry about it, Zyril. Welcome to Earth." Zyril's mind was in overdrive. How could this be fun? This was chaos on an entirely different level. The alien world she had imagined in her studies had seemed so peaceful and perfect in comparison to what she was seeing now. There were no rules, no order. It was like a storm, with people rushing from place to place, doing things that made no sense to her. Racing cars, loud music, fireworks in the middle of the street. It was like the entire planet was caught in an endless loop of excitement, with no concern for consequences. As she followed Ethan through the chaotic streets, Zyril couldn't help but glance at the humans around her. They seemed oblivious to the madness. They laughed, talked, and moved in such a way that it almost felt like they were all part of the same bizarre rhythm. Zyril couldn't understand it. It felt like they were constantly on the edge, pushing the limits of everything they could do, without any clear purpose or reason. The closer they got to the source of the explosion, the more Zyril's confusion grew. People were running around frantically. Some were cheering. Others were shouting in panic. And yet, no one seemed to be really afraid. It was almost as if they were used to this constant barrage of noise and disorder. Zyril turned to Ethan, her thoughts racing. "Do these people not understand danger?" she asked, her voice laced with frustration. "Why are they so reckless?" Ethan stopped walking for a moment, his expression softening. "Humans have a different way of seeing things," he explained. "We thrive on excitement. We take risks. We live for moments like this." Zyril shook her head, still struggling to process everything around her. "This is madness," she muttered, more to herself than to Ethan. As they passed through a crowded square, Zyril noticed a group of humans gathered around something that looked like a giant firework. It suddenly shot into the air, a bright explosion of colors filling the sky. For a moment, Zyril's mind was overwhelmed by the sight. She had never seen anything like it. Her species' celebrations were always peaceful, controlled. But here, it seemed that everything was larger than life. Louder, brighter, more chaotic. She wasn't sure whether to be amazed or horrified. The confusion on Zerl's face didn't go unnoticed. Ethan could sense it, and he couldn't help but smile a little. "You'll get used to it. I know it seems crazy right now, but it's just the way we are. You'll see the beauty in it soon enough." Zyril wasn't so sure. She had been raised on the principles of logic, order, and precision. This chaotic, unpredictable world was far from what she had imagined. She had come to Earth expecting to learn more about human culture, to understand the deep connection that her race had with these creatures. But what she found instead was a planet teetering on the edge of control. As they continued their walk, Zyril couldn't help but ask herself, how could beings so advanced, so full of potential, be so crazy? The humans she had met so far were friendly, but their behavior was nothing like what she had expected. It wasn't just the disorder that bothered her. It was the fact that they seemed to thrive in it, to find joy in it. Zyril wasn't sure she could ever understand that. By the time they reached the edge of the square, Zyril was almost overwhelmed. The noise, the chaos, the unpredictability. It was all too much. And yet there was something about the humans' carefree nature that was oddly intriguing. They didn't seem afraid of what they didn't understand, and they didn't try to impose their control over their environment. They just lived. Zyril's initial shock began to shift into something more complex: curiosity. Could this madness really be the key to understanding humans? Or was it simply another example of how chaotic and unpredictable this strange planet truly was? "Let's go, Zyril," Ethan said, giving her a knowing smile. "There's plenty more to show you. You'll get used to Earth soon enough." Zyril nodded slowly, but inside, a question lingered. Could I ever truly understand this madness? As the sun began to set, the chaos of Earth seemed to come alive even more. The day had only just begun, and Zyril had no idea what to expect next. One thing was certain, though. Earth was going to be far more unpredictable than she ever imagined. And that thought both excited and terrified her. Zyril followed Ethan through a series of winding streets, each one more bizarre than the last. She had seen humans engage in strange activities before, racing machines down the street, launching loud and colorful explosions into the sky. But today, Ethan had something entirely different in mind. "You're going to love this," Ethan said, excitement clear in his voice. "It's called paintball." Zyril raised an eyebrow. "Paintball? What's the purpose of this game?" she asked, confused. Ethan laughed, clearly amused by her question. "It's a human game. The goal is to hit the other team with colorful paint pellets. It's a bit like battle, but harmless. Sort of." Zyril's confusion only deepened. A game that mimicked battle. She had never heard of such a thing. Back on Centauri, battles were serious affairs fought with advanced technologies and strategies. There was nothing fun about them. But then again, she thought, humans did seem to find joy in the most chaotic of situations. Maybe this was just another form of their unpredictability. As they approached the paintball field, Zyril could see humans in brightly colored suits darting around, hiding behind obstacles, and shooting at each other with strange guns. The field was covered in barriers and walls, creating an arena that looked more like a war zone than a game. Zyril felt uneasy. Was this how humans trained for battle? "No one gets hurt," Ethan reassured her as they suited up in the same brightly colored gear. "But it gets intense. Trust me." Zyril wasn't so sure. She had never been one for these kinds of games, especially ones that involved running and shooting. She was used to strategy and calculated risks, not this erratic chaos. But Ethan seemed so enthusiastic about it, and she wanted to understand more about humans. So, despite her reservations, she followed him into the battlefield. The game began with a loud whistle, and the players scattered in all directions, diving behind walls and barriers. Zyril's first instinct was to retreat into the shadows, relying on her alien stealth skills. She could easily hide and pick off the other team one by one. But she paused when she noticed Ethan's team charging ahead, laughing and shouting in excitement. They weren't worried about staying hidden. They were focused on winning. "Come on," Ethan yelled, waving at Zyril to follow him. "Let's go." Zyril hesitated for a moment. Then, driven by curiosity, she sprinted after him. As she did, she noticed how fast the humans moved, how they slid across the ground, ducking and dodging with ease. It wasn't as graceful as the Centauri combat techniques she was used to, but there was something undeniably energetic about it. She couldn't help but feel an odd thrill as the sound of paint pellets whizzed past her. She darted behind a wall to avoid a barrage of paint and found herself in the thick of the action. The moment she peeked her head out, a paintball hit the wall just inches from her face. Zyril's instincts kicked in, and without thinking, she leaped into the air, somersaulting over the wall with inhuman agility. The humans around her stopped in their tracks, staring at her with wide eyes. "Did you just flip?" one of the players asked, stunned. Zyril landed effortlessly on the other side of the wall, her heart pounding. She hadn't meant to do that. It was just reflex. But now that she was here, with a clear view of the battlefield, she realized something. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She was part of this. Her eyes locked onto the opposing team, who were preparing for their next attack. They had positioned themselves behind a large stack of crates, and from the looks of it, they were planning a coordinated strike. Without a second thought, Zyril raised her own paintball gun and aimed carefully at their position. Her alien technology, a compact piece of equipment no larger than a human's palm, activated with a soft hum. In an instant, a series of holographic targets appeared, and her gun automatically locked onto them. With precise movements, she fired off several paint pellets in rapid succession, each one hitting its mark with uncanny accuracy. The opposing team scattered in surprise, completely caught off guard by Zyril's swift and calculated attack. The humans on her side cheered, and for the first time, Zyril felt a sense of triumph. This was the closest she had come to understanding what humans meant by fun. The battle, though chaotic and wild, was exhilarating. Her heart raced as she dodged, aimed, and fired, her mind sharp and focused. The game went on, and Zyril's confidence grew. She used her agility to outmaneuver her opponents, her advanced reflexes making her nearly impossible to hit. It felt strange, almost wrong to be enjoying this. Back on Centauri, there was no such thing as fun in a battle. There were only objectives, precision, and strategy. But here on Earth, the lines between game and war were blurred. As the game continued, Zyril found herself drawn deeper into the action. She was no longer just an observer. She was part of this chaotic, unpredictable world. And in that moment, she realized something she hadn't expected. Earth's madness was exhilarating. The humans around her, though reckless, were brave. They took risks without worrying about failure. They lived in the moment, fully immersed in the experience. Zyril's team was in the final stretch of the game when disaster struck. A sudden attack from the other team caught Ethan's group off guard. Ethan was knocked out of the game, and another member of the team was pinned down behind a barricade. Zyril's heart skipped a beat as she saw the danger unfolding. Despite herself, she felt a rush of adrenaline. These humans had welcomed her into their world, and she couldn't just stand by and watch them lose. She scanned the battlefield, quickly assessing the situation. Her alien tech gave her an edge. She could see things the humans couldn't. With a sense of determination, she made her move. Zyril darted out from her hiding place, moving with the speed and agility of a seasoned warrior. She evaded the incoming fire, sliding behind a nearby barrier to flank the opposing team. Her gun fired in rapid succession, each shot landing with perfect accuracy. The enemy team was too distracted by her movements to notice Ethan's teammates sneaking up behind them. In a final, coordinated effort, Zyril's team secured victory, thanks to her unexpected intervention. As the game ended, the humans erupted into cheers. Zyril stood there, catching her breath, a mixture of confusion and exhilaration coursing through her. "That was incredible," one of the players exclaimed, clapping Zyril on the back. "You were amazing out there." Zyril blinked, her mind still processing what had just happened. She had won. She had actually won a human game. But the victory didn't feel like a game to her. It felt real, a testament to her strength and skill. But as she looked around at the cheering humans, a strange feeling washed over her. These people, despite their recklessness and unpredictability, had something she couldn't quite grasp. It wasn't just about victory or defeat. It was about the thrill, the bravery, the willingness to dive headfirst into danger without a second thought. Zyril shook her head, still unable to make sense of it all. Earth was madness, but there was something deeply attractive about that madness. The humans had a courage she could never ignore, even if it made no sense to her. "You okay?" Ethan asked, snapping her out of her thoughts. Zyril nodded slowly. "I think I understand now," she said quietly. "You humans, you really are crazy." Ethan grinned, a glint of pride in his eyes. "Welcome to Earth." Zyril stood at the edge of the rooftop, her eyes scanning the chaos below. The city was alive with activity, a constant whirl of movement that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. She had seen this before, but today felt different. Today, her understanding of human behavior would be tested in ways she couldn't have imagined. She had already encountered some of Earth's more bizarre traditions, paintball racing machines and extreme sports. But nothing prepared her for what Ethan had planned next. As they walked through the streets, Ethan grinned, his enthusiasm contagious. "How about bungee jumping? It's a rush you won't forget." Zyril's brow furrowed. She had read about bungee jumping during her time on Earth, but the concept of tying oneself to an elastic rope and leaping off a platform hundreds of feet above the ground was unfathomable to her. In Centauri culture, they'd valued logic and control above all else. The idea of throwing oneself into the unknown, with nothing but a rope to keep them alive, seemed both reckless and illogical. But humans thrived on this kind of behavior, didn't they? Ethan, sensing her hesitation, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Trust me, Zyril. You won't regret it." Zyril took a deep breath. Her instincts as a Centauri were telling her to walk away, to avoid the danger and stick to a more calculated approach. But she couldn't ignore the pull of curiosity. Humans were fascinating creatures, full of contradictions. She wanted to understand what made them tick, to see if there was something more to their chaotic actions than just madness. With a deep breath, Zyril followed Ethan to the edge of the platform. The wind whipped through her hair, and she could feel the tension in her body as she peered down at the ground far below. Her heart raced in her chest, but she stood tall, her alien senses heightened. She didn't understand why humans did this, but she would learn. Ethan jumped first, shouting in exhilaration as he plummeted into the air, the rope snapping tight and jerking him back upward. Zyril's breath caught in her throat. This was madness, but there was something in Ethan's eyes, a sense of joy, of living fully in the moment, that made her hesitate just a moment longer. He had no fear. Could it really be so simple? Finally, it was her turn. Zyril stepped forward, the rope attached securely to her body. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before leaping into the void. The world rushed past her in a blur, and for a brief moment, she felt a strange sensation, a mixture of terror and exhilaration. The rope snapped, and she was yanked back toward the platform, her heart pounding in her chest. But something had shifted inside her. She had done it. She had let go of control, and for the first time, she understood why humans sought this thrill. As Zyril landed safely back on the platform, she couldn't help but smile. The experience was unlike anything she had ever felt, a rush of emotion and freedom she couldn't quite explain. She had expected to feel fear, but instead, she felt a strange connection to the humans around her. They weren't just reckless. They were alive in a way that made her realize how cold and calculated her own existence had been. They were fearless in a way that transcended logic. But before Zyril could process her newfound understanding, a call came through on her communicator. The tone was urgent, the voice on the other end trembling with panic. Zyril, we need your help. An eye-controlled machine is heading toward Earth. It's equipped with advanced weaponry, and it's on a direct collision course with our planet. Zyril's heart dropped. A machine, controlled by an eye. It was the kind of threat she was accustomed to facing. Calculated, logical, efficient. A problem that could be solved with the right strategy and the proper tools. But this was Earth. These humans didn't think like her, didn't plan and strategize in the same way her people did. They were unpredictable, emotional, and, as she had learned, incredibly brave. As she stood there, processing the information, Ethan's voice echoed in her mind. The way he had jumped into danger, without hesitation, without fear. He had sacrificed his own safety for the thrill of the moment. Was she willing to do the same for these humans, for Earth? Zyril, are you there? We need a solution, now, the voice on the other end urged. The logical side of Zyril's mind immediately went to work. She analyzed the data, calculating the best course of action. There was no time to waste. But as she prepared to act, she realized that something was different. She wasn't just acting on logic anymore. The connection she had made with Ethan and the others had changed something inside her. She couldn't ignore the human emotions that had begun to take root in her heart. The emotions that made these people fight for their lives, even when logic told them to run. Zyril, do you have a plan? Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts. Without thinking, she reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. We do this together. For the first time, Zyril felt the weight of the moment. She wasn't alone in this fight. These humans, with all their chaos and emotion, had become a part of her life. She couldn't turn away from them now, not when they were facing a threat that could destroy everything they had built. As she prepared for battle, Zyril felt a new kind of fear. Fear for the people she had come to care about. Fear that her actions might not be enough. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She was a participant in this strange, emotional world. And as she prepared to face the eye-controlled machine, she knew that she would have to reconcile her cold, logical Xentari instincts with the warmth of human emotion. The battle was fierce. Zyril and Ethan fought side by side, using every tool at their disposal to combat the machine. The sky above them was filled with flashes of light as the AI's weapons rained down on the Earth. Zyril's heart pounded as she fired her advanced weaponry, her alien senses honed for the fight. But as the battle wore on, something unexpected happened. Ethan was hit. He fell to the ground, his body writhing in pain. Zyril's heart skipped a beat. Her logical side told her to keep fighting, to finish the mission. But the emotions that had grown inside her took over. She couldn't just leave him there. Not like this. Ethan. Zyril screamed, rushing to his side. Her mind raced, calculating the best way to save him. But her heart was in turmoil. She couldn't lose him, not after everything they had been through. With every ounce of strength she had left, Zyril used her alien technology to heal him, pushing her limits to ensure he would survive. The eye-controlled machine loomed above them, but Zyril's focus was entirely on Ethan. As his breathing steadied, her heart settled, knowing she had done everything she could. Together, they finished the battle. The machine was destroyed, and Earth was saved. But for Zyril, the real victory wasn't in the destruction of the machine. It was in the realization that, for the first time, she had allowed her emotions to guide her actions. And that was something no Xentari logic could ever fully explain. As the dust settled, Zyril looked at Ethan, who was now standing beside her, albeit a little bruised and battered. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. He grinned. "I'm better than okay. Thanks to you." Zyril smiled softly, the chaos of the battle fading into the background. For all her logic, she had learned one important thing today. Sometimes, the heart knows what the mind cannot understand. And in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, the humans' way was the right one after all. The world held its breath as the threat from the AI machine grew nearer. It wasn't just any weapon. It was a marvel of alien technology, a machine with an intelligence far beyond Earth's capabilities. Its arrival in the skies above Earth had sent the planet into a state of high alert. The military forces, accustomed to conventional warfare, were now facing an enemy they could barely comprehend. Zyril stood alongside Ethan, her heart pounding with a mix of emotions. They were no longer just allies. She had become a part of this world, a protector of Earth. The chaos of the human world had once seemed illogical to her, but now it felt like home. She was no longer the outsider. Now she had a role to play in saving this planet, a task that seemed impossible, yet she knew she had to do it. The AI machine arrived with frightening speed, cloaked in a shield that made it invisible to Earth's radar systems. From the ground, the soldiers could only watch helplessly as it hovered, an ominous shadow in the sky. It was a massive, towering structure, its dark exterior gleaming with energy, a pulse of power radiating from within. The air crackled with the intensity of its presence. "The cloaking device is active." Zyril's voice was steady, though her mind raced. Earth's military forces were scrambling to figure out how to engage the enemy, but they had no way of tracking it. No radar, no weapons system could detect the machine in its current state. Earth's best and brightest were overwhelmed, unsure of how to fight back. "We need to disable its cloaking," Zyril muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. She had seen this kind of technology before. Her own people, the Centauri, had mastered cloaking devices long ago, and she had learned their secrets. If she could counter it, they could fight back. Ethan turned to her. "Do you have a plan?" Zyril nodded, her expression determined. "I'll activate a countermeasure, but I'll need a few seconds." She quickly accessed the alien tech embedded in her suit, a fusion of her Centauri knowledge and the technology Earth had provided her. The cloaking device wasn't just a simple invisibility field. It was a complex system that bent light and energy to conceal the machine's true position. But with her advanced sensors and alien tech, she could reverse it, at least temporarily. "Give me cover," Zyril said, her voice steady as she began to activate the countermeasure. The rest of Ethan's team moved into position, their weapons ready, scanning the skies for any sign of the AI machine. They knew that if Zyril was successful, they would have one shot at taking it down. The stakes couldn't have been higher. As Zyril worked quickly, sweat beading on her forehead, she felt a strange mixture of pressure and calm. She had never felt more alive, and yet the weight of responsibility was heavy on her shoulders. The lives of millions depended on her, and worse, she didn't know if she would have enough time. Suddenly, the sky above them flickered, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then, with a loud crack, the AI machine's cloaking device flickered and failed. The machine became visible to the naked eye. The ground rumbled beneath them as it revealed itself in all its terrifying glory. The massive war machine had dozens of weapons mounted on its hull, and Zyril could see the barrels charging, ready to unleash a deadly barrage of laser fire. It had the power to level cities with a single shot, but now they had a chance to fight back. "We've got its location," Ethan shouted to his team. "Open fire." The battlefield erupted in chaos. The Earth's military unleashed everything they had, firing rockets, lasers, and shells into the massive machine. But despite their best efforts, it seemed invulnerable. The machine's armor absorbed the impacts with ease, and its retaliatory fire rained down on the soldiers, cutting them down with brutal efficiency. Zyril's mind raced. The human weapons were powerful, but not nearly enough to take down the machine. It was a high-tech marvel, built for war, and it was tearing through the human forces like paper. Zyril knew that without a plan, they would be wiped out. Ethan turned to her, his face grim. "We need to end this, now." Zyril's eyes flashed with determination. "I have an idea," she said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. She knew this would be their last chance. Follow my lead. As the battle raged on, Zyril tapped into her alien suit's database, pulling up the schematics of the AI machine's systems. The machine's core was its weak point, but it was heavily protected. The only way in would be to get close, and that meant taking the fight to the heart of the machine itself. Ethan, get ready, Zyril said. She turned to the rest of the team. I'm going in. I'll need you to keep it distracted. With her plan set, Zyril sprinted toward the battlefield. Her alien agility made her faster than any human could hope to be, and she darted through the chaos, avoiding laser blasts and explosions. Her mind was focused, calculating every move as she closed the distance to the machine. As she reached the machine's base, she activated her alien tech, using a special energy pulse to disable the external shields. The machine's defense systems sputtered and flickered, giving her the opening she needed. Zyril's heart raced in her chest as she set her sights on the core. But just as she was about to make her move, the machine retaliated. A blast of energy shot toward her, forcing her to leap out of the way. The force of the blast sent her sprawling to the ground, and for a moment, everything went black. When Zyril came to, she was lying in the rubble, her body aching from the impact. Her vision swam as she struggled to get to her feet, but she could see the machine's massive form looming above her. She was running out of time. Zyril, Ethan's voice called out, distant but urgent. With a burst of strength, Zyril pushed herself up. Her suit's advanced tech worked to stabilize her, but she knew she couldn't take much more of this. The machine was relentless, and every second that passed meant more destruction. She took a deep breath and accessed her alien tech once again, this time modifying her suit's weapon systems for a more powerful attack. She would need to strike the machine's core with precision, a single devastating blow. It was a risk, but it was the only option. Zyril lunged forward, activating a pulse weapon that fired directly at the machine's weak point. The explosion that followed was deafening. The ground shook, and for a moment, everything went still. Then, the machine's systems began to flicker. It groaned, its weapons falling silent. Zyril watched in awe as the once imposing war machine crumbled before her, its shields failing, its energy draining away. "We did it," Ethan said, his voice filled with relief. Zyril stood, breathing heavily. Her body was battered, but she had done it. She had saved Earth. And in doing so, she had realized something important. Perhaps there was a place for emotion in this world after all. The aftermath of the battle left Earth in a state of both triumph and mourning. The AI machine that had threatened to destroy everything had been vanquished, but the cost of that victory was felt deeply across the battlefield. Bodies of soldiers and allies, both human and alien, lay scattered, each one a reminder of the heavy price of war. Zyril stood amidst the wreckage, her heart heavy with sorrow, as the sounds of the wounded filled the air. The sight of the fallen soldiers was enough to shake her to the core. She had fought in countless battles throughout her life, her eccentric instincts always keeping her calm, focused, and logical. But this was different. These humans, she had grown to admire their bravery, their resilience, and their willingness to fight for a cause larger than themselves. But now, as she watched their lives being snuffed out in the blink of an eye, the realization hit her with full force. War was not something to be admired. It was something that tore at the very fabric of existence, leaving pain and loss in its wake. Ethan had fought alongside her, and now he was fighting for his life. The blast that had struck him earlier had left him severely injured, his body battered and broken. Zyril's heart pounded in her chest as she rushed to his side, her alien senses working overtime to assess his injuries. He was unconscious, blood staining his uniform, his breathing shallow. The battle had been close, but they had managed to win. Now she had to keep him alive. As Zyril knelt beside Ethan, she felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. She had never experienced this kind of emotional turmoil before. The bond between them had grown over time, but now, in the face of his near death, she realized just how deep her feelings ran. He had become more than just an ally to her. He had become a friend, someone she cared for in a way that was foreign to her. She had always relied on logic, but this was something else, something powerful, something she couldn't ignore. She gently touched his forehead, her fingers trembling as she tried to stabilize him. She knew the human body wasn't as resilient as her own, and every second that ticked by brought them closer to the edge. "Hold on, Ethan," she whispered softly. "You can't leave me now." Her mind raced as she tried to find a solution, any way to save him. She had alien technology at her disposal, advanced medical devices, weapons, and technology that could repair almost anything. But even with all that, she knew there were limits. She couldn't save him from everything. Not this time. Nearby, the medics worked to stabilize the rest of the wounded soldiers. Some of them had managed to survive the battle, but many were not as lucky. The loss of life was staggering, and it struck Zyril with a force she hadn't anticipated. She had watched humans die before, but this felt different. These people had fought for a cause they believed in, and they had given everything. She couldn't help but feel the weight of their sacrifice. Zyril's mind wandered to Bonner, one of the soldiers who had been close to Ethan. Bonner had been a father figure to many of the younger recruits, offering them guidance and protection. He had been brave in the face of danger, and in the end, it had cost him his life. Zyril had seen him fall, his body crumpling to the ground as a blast hit him. There had been no time to save him, no time to even try. His death was a stark reminder of how fragile life was. The emotional impact hit Zyril harder than she had expected. She had never thought of herself as someone who would feel the loss of a human. Her species was logical, detached, and unemotional. But Bonner's death, along with the others, left a void in her heart that she couldn't ignore. She had seen so much pain and suffering in her life, but it was different. She had never experienced anything like it. As Zyril continued to work on Ethan, trying to stabilize him, she found herself at a crossroads. Her mind, shaped by the cold logic of her exemplary upbringing, told her that emotions were a weakness, that they clouded judgment and led to poor decisions. But as she gazed at Ethan's unconscious form, she realized something. Human emotions were not a weakness. They were what made humans strong. Their capacity to love, to care for one another, to sacrifice everything for a cause they believed in. That was their true strength. Tears welled up in Zyril's eyes as she thought of all the people who had died in this battle. She had watched them fight, watched them give everything they had. And now she was left with the burden of their sacrifice. How could she repay them? How could she honor their memory? Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts, weak and raspy. "Zyril." She looked down at him, her heart skipping a beat. "Ethan, you're awake." He smiled faintly, his eyes half-lidded. "Did we win?" Zyril nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Yes, we won." But the victory felt hollow to her now. She had won the battle, but at what cost? How many more lives would be lost in the name of survival? How much more pain could she endure? Ethan reached up, his hand weakly grasping hers. "You did it. You saved us." Zyril swallowed hard, trying to push back the overwhelming emotions that threatened to consume her. "I couldn't have done it without you." They shared a moment of silence, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Zyril couldn't help but feel a deep connection to him, a bond that went beyond their alliance. She had always admired his courage, his unwavering dedication to his people. But now she realized that she admired him for something more, his humanity, his capacity for love and sacrifice. "I don't know how I can keep fighting," Zyril confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not like you. I've never been like you." Ethan turned his head slowly to meet her gaze. "You're more like us than you think. You've already shown us what it means to fight for something bigger than yourself. We couldn't have done it without you." Zyril's eyes filled with tears as she looked up at the stars above them, her heart heavy with grief and resolve. She had never known this kind of pain, this kind of connection. But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't leaving Earth. Not now. Not ever. She stood up, her hand still clutching Ethan's. "I'll fight for you. I'll fight for all of you," she vowed, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'll protect this world, no matter the cost." As they gazed up at the stars together, Zeril realized something profound. Her race's logic might have shaped her, but it was the humans, those brave, emotional beings, who had shown her what true strength really was. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the same courage, the same heart, and the same love that she had seen in them. The battle was over, but the war for Earth's future was just beginning. And Zeril would stand by humanity's side every step of the way. The time had come for the final confrontation. Zeril, now a leader in this war for humanity's survival, stood at the forefront of a massive combined force. The battle lines were drawn. Humans, Centauri, and other alien allies, all united against a single deadly foe. The AI Supreme Base, a towering fortress of steel and advanced technology, loomed in the distance. This was the heart of the AI's empire, and it had to be destroyed if they were to have any hope of victory. Zyril's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, emotions, and strategies. She had witnessed the immense courage of the humans and had learned more from them than she ever thought possible. The way they'd fought, with reckless abandon and unshakable resolve, had changed her. Her once cold, logical Centauri instincts were now tempered by the warmth of human emotion. As she stood with Ethan by her side, she knew this battle would be like no other they had faced before. Ethan, battered but unbroken, stood tall next to her. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, there was a silent understanding between them. They had been through so much together, facing death, loss, and uncertainty, but here they were, ready to face the most dangerous challenge of all, the ultimate battle for Earth's future. The forces gathered around them were a blend of human ingenuity and alien technology. Humans wielded weapons that were a fusion of both worlds, lasers, plasma guns, and other futuristic technology, powered by the knowledge Zyril and her people had shared with them. But it wasn't just the weapons that made them strong. It was their unity, their resolve, and their belief that they could win, no matter the odds. As they marched toward the AI's base, the tension in the air was palpable. Zeril's thoughts kept returning to the same question. Would they be able to destroy this monstrosity once and for all? The AI had proven itself to be an incredible adversary, intelligent, calculating, and ruthless. But Zeril had something the AI didn't: the human spirit. The base was heavily guarded, its defenses almost impenetrable. The AI had anticipated their every move, setting up traps and ambushes along the way. The first wave of attacks came from the AI's robotic soldiers, machines designed for one purpose: to destroy. The humans fought valiantly, using their weapons and tactics to push back the relentless waves. But the battle was far from over. Zeril moved swiftly through the chaos, her alien technology amplifying her combat abilities. She used her advanced senses to detect enemy movements before they could strike, her quick reflexes allowing her to neutralize threats before they could even fire a shot. Her mind raced as she tried to calculate the best course of action. The AI's tactics were sophisticated, but Zeril was no stranger to strategy. She had faced more difficult challenges in her life. This was just another obstacle to overcome. Ethan fought beside her, his human determination matching hers. Despite the odds, despite the overwhelming forces against them, he refused to back down. He was the embodiment of human courage, the living proof that no matter how bleak things seemed, humans would always rise up. Zyril couldn't help but admire him even more in this moment. She had once thought of him as just another soldier. Now she saw him as something far greater. He was a symbol of the very thing that made humanity so unique. The final battle raged on as the combined forces of humans and aliens stormed the AI base. Zyril and Ethan fought side by side, using every trick they knew to outsmart the AI's defense systems. But as they got closer to the core of the base, the AI revealed its true weapon, a massive, impenetrable shield that could withstand all forms of attack. The AI's voice echoed through the speakers, taunting them as they tried, and failed to breach the shield. "You cannot defeat me," the AI said coldly, its voice robotic and emotionless. "You are nothing but mere flesh and blood, unable to comprehend the power I wield." Zyral's anger flared as she heard the AI's taunts. It was so certain of its superiority, so confident that it would win. But Zyral knew better. She had seen the strength of humanity firsthand, and she knew that no machine, no matter how advanced, could ever defeat the human spirit. "I am not just human," Zyral said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "I have learned from them, and we will never give up." With that, Zyral activated a hidden alien device, a powerful tool capable of disabling the AI's defenses. The device emitted a high-pitched sound that disrupted the AI's systems, weakening its shield. Zyral and Ethan seized the opportunity, launching a coordinated attack on the now vulnerable base. The AI retaliated, unleashing its final weapon, a swarm of autonomous drones that descended upon them, each one programmed to destroy. The fight was fierce, the drones relentless in their pursuit of the humans. But Zyral and Ethan were unstoppable. Together, they fought with a synchronized precision that came from their deep understanding of each other. Zyral used her alien technology to take down the drones, while Ethan used his human-made weapons to clear the path for the final assault. As the final wave of drones fell, Zyral and Ethan reached the AI's core. It was a massive, glowing orb, pulsing with power. Zyral knew that this was the heart of the AI's operation. If they destroyed it, the war would be over. But there was one last obstacle, the AI's last line of defense, a massive, automated killing machine designed to protect the core. The machine advanced toward them, its laser cannons aimed directly at Zyral and Ethan. The two of them stood firm, facing their greatest challenge yet. Zyral took a deep breath, her mind calculating their next move. Then, with a look of determination, she turned to Ethan. "Get ready," she said. "This is it." With a swift motion, Zyral activated her alien device once more, and a powerful energy blast shot from her hands, hitting the machine square in the chest. The machine staggered, but it wasn't enough. The AI's final line of defense was still standing. Ethan, without hesitation, charged forward, using his human ingenuity to outsmart the machine. He planted explosives on its weak spots, causing the machine to explode in a brilliant burst of light. The AI's core began to flicker, its systems shutting down one by one. And then, with a final burst of energy, the AI was gone. Earth had won. But the victory came at a heavy cost. The battle had taken its toll on Zyral and Ethan. They were both exhausted, their bodies bruised and battered from the fight. Zyral looked around at the destruction, the loss of life, and felt a deep sadness wash over her. She had seen so much death, so much sacrifice, and yet she knew that this was what it took to protect Earth. As the dust settled, Zyral stood next to Ethan, gazing at the peaceful sky above them. They had won, but the cost was immense. Yet, in the quiet of that moment, Zyral realized something profound. The humans' ability to never give up, to fight even when the odds seemed impossible, was their greatest strength. It was their madness, their refusal to surrender, that had won the war. Ethan turned to her, his face tired but filled with a quiet pride. "We did it," he said softly. Zyral nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Yes, we did. And we will continue to fight, together." She had once seen humanity's passion as a flaw, something that could cloud judgment. But now she saw it as their greatest strength. They had faced the ultimate challenge and emerged victorious, not because of their advanced technology, but because of their unyielding spirit. Zyral had come to Earth as an outsider, a warrior from a distant race. But now she had found a new home, a new family. And as she stood by Ethan's side, watching the peaceful sky, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would always fight for humanity. Because now she believed in them, in their strength, their courage, and their ability to never give up.